Hey, what's going on everyone, and welcome to another episode of Designer Head. It's been a while, absolutely been a while. Many reasons why it's been a while, and I know I said it last time in the, I think, previous video that I posted. This time it really has been a while, and even somebody mentioned to me on LinkedIn that, hey, been missing your videos. The thing is, life happens, I get busy, things around with family and whatnot, and then we got COVID and we were sick for a few weeks. We're all fine. Thank you for everyone who sent me good wishes and health recovery and whatnot. I appreciate that. Now, let's just jump right into it. For those of you who are new here, welcome to Designer Head. I talk about design trends, my own rants, transitioning into product and UX design. Please like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. So you know every time I post a new video. I will try posting more videos and more often. But for today, the topic that I want to talk about is something that it seems like a lot of people kind of know that they need it, but don't necessarily invest in it. Not financially, if you will, but time, I guess, and effort. And another thing that people kind of completely forget is a big and important part of the thing that we're going to be talking about. So let me move away the mystery of what we're going to be talking about, and let's hit it. All right, so the topic we're going to be talking about today is how do we craft a story? And why do we need a story? Many people do ask me should I mention, that I used to be a lawyer or car mechanic or a doctor or paralegal or an engineer or an architect or interior designer or whatever the fuck it is. It doesn't matter, right? When people ask me about should they include that story before they transitioned into product and UX design, and the answer is always will be yes, absolutely. Here's the thing. I'll uncover a few things about the importance of having a story. So the first thing that you all need to know is your story is essentially, quote unquote, your pitch, right? Think about it when new founders of startups go to investors to have a pitch, right? And that pitch typically is, it's not about necessarily, hey, we have this great idea, here's how it's going to work, here's the potential of it. Absolutely, these points are very important, and they typically are being presented in some PowerPoint and whatnot. But among that, right, there's a story. What's convincing investors typically to invest, among other things, it is the story, right? It's when the founder or the founders tell an interesting story, something engaging, something that feels inspiring, feels powerful and ingenious, or genius, or the list goes on, right? This is what actually sells. So for us as creatives, regardless who you are, regardless if you're a UX designer, product designer, UX researcher, visual designer, UI designer, graphic designer, brand designer, print designer, illustrator, photographer, creator, whatever the fuck it is you do, your story is the one thing that essentially kind of tells other people outside of your immediate vicinity about who you are. And in that same story covers what's your value, what are you good at, why are you good at it, how do you arrive at that, where did you begin, what did you have to overcome in order to become it, and so forth. So think of it as almost like it's almost like reading a book, right? When you read a book, there's always, or when you're watching a movie, there is always a hero. There is always an evil or something bad happening. There is always a beginning and an end. There is always kind of some sort of like a storyline, right? So in your kind of situation, if you will, you are the hero, right? You're the hero of your own story, and you're taking your viewer, your visitor of your website, your reader or whatnot, you're taking them on a journey, and that journey is for them to kind of understand, feel, and almost be like being there with you as you went through whatever you were going through, getting from the point of whatever you started all the way through whatever you're doing before, and then your kind of epiphany, if you will, maybe not an epiphany, but just, random discovery of a new field that you passionately fell in love with. And I truly hope you did passionately fell in love with, and not just basically whatever, I'll try that. We'll cover that in another story or another topic, I guess. And then you become this, right? And how do you succeed, and how do you navigate this? So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is the first part of your story is always where you came from. A lot of people make the mistake of not including that. So for instance, I meet a lot of young aspiring designers, and what I see time and time again is the mistake of, well, I'm a transitioner and I come from, I don't know, let's take car mechanic for an example. Kind of like one of those fields of professions that you would never think that a person will transition from being a car mechanic into, let's say, a product design. But they do, surprisingly. Not many, but some. I've met one or two in the last 3+ years, I think, if my memory serves me right. But anyway, let's take that kind of person, a car mechanic, somebody who spent, they went to maybe some technical college and earned their, maybe not a degree, but a profession, right? And got, became a car mechanic. So they've been fixing cars for, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And then suddenly at some point, they realized that, hey, there's those things that I'm using on the phone called apps. And there's those things that I visit on the internet called websites. I wonder who actually make those. And so, you go and you start digging. Oh, shit. Okay, so the UX designer does this, and the product designer does that, and then an engineer does this, and then a backend engineer does that. And then all of this comes together on some sort of a server. And there's a domain thing, and I type this domain and I reach the website, or I go to App Store and I download the app. Shit, that's interesting. But which part? I think product design is interesting. Let me dive into that. As the person you dive into that part of the digital industry, and you discover that you passionately really love this thing. Yeah, you go and you fix cars throughout the day, but then you come home and you sit there until middle of the night tinkering with potential websites, or maybe designing a new app for how to diagnose a problem in the car without having this heavy thing or a big bulky thing that you have to hook up the car to through your at your garage in order to diagnose a problem, versus maybe plugging some small thing that I believe Verizon actually has that thing. You can plug into your car and it will diagnose your problems on the mobile app. Maybe that's the thing, right? And so you go and you find either a course or a boot camp, whatever the process is that you discovered, or yourself teaching yourself through YouTube videos like this one, or other online resources. But you did arrive at the point that from now on, I am it. I no longer want to be a car mechanic. I want to be a product designer. That's what I want to do with my life. And I want to do it for the rest of my life. I love it. I want to be it. Okay. So now you go, and your first thing to do is to put together your portfolio and your resume and hit the ground running trying to find your first entry job as a product designer. So what do? You maybe find 1 or 2 case studies that you have tinkered with as a personal project and you put it in your portfolio, or you did it at your bootcamp, you put it in your portfolio, you put some contact information, you put your name, you put your little kind of a blurb that people like to put at the beginning of the website when people on your landing page. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I am a product designer, passionate about blah, 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 solving problems through design thinking and UX methodologies and whatnot. Cool. Useless. The one thing that your landing page kind of beginning of your story needs to have is not who you are today, which is important. It's important to mention who you identify as, right? I identify as a product designer. So I am putting on my landing page that, hi, my name is so-and-so. I am a product designer. The rest needs to be a bit more engaging. It needs to be more story-like telling. It doesn't have to be a block of text. It can be only a few lines, but it needs to cover in those few lines what do you do, for how long you've been doing it, and who you are, product designer, UX designer, UX researcher, and whatnot, and maybe where you came from or what's your specialty. How are you unique, right? Now the next main event here is your about page. Surprisingly to me, and I've covered that in my other videos, which you can find probably, I'm gonna leave the link below, that I'm gonna try to do this corner, I don't know, I've never done this before, so if you don't see it in one of the corners as other people do it, I'm gonna just drop a link below. But what I do see time and time again, as I covered in my video about portfolios and importance about portfolios and how to build them, is that people don't have about page. They have their case studies, they have their contact information, they have a little blurb about themselves at the top of that landing page, which is acting equally the same as the case study page, and that is it. Outside of that, there's nothing else about you. That's not how that shit works. When I'm about to hire you, I want to know you. I don't care where you live. We hire remotely these days. Many of the companies do. I mean, I would care on some level if you live in the United States or not, because some companies cannot hire outside of the United States. That's a whole different topic that actually I think I should cover, because many people don't understand how hiring process works globally, if you will. Since I worked throughout 3 different continents and 5 different countries, I have a tiny bit of an idea of how this process works. So what happens is people don't have the about page, and the about page is incredibly important, because before I make a decision to even reach out to you, to call you, I'm gonna go and read about you. And if your about you does not match my or my team's ideology, philosophy, view of the world, and whatnot, then there's no point for us to even talk. Not because I want to be this asshole that don't want to hire you because your views are slightly different than my team's views. That's not how it works. I want diversified views on my team. However, when you build a team, you want to make sure that people that you put on that team are not going to be disrupting, toxic to the team, or vice versa. And that means that people will be working well together, right? Now, in many cases, people, and I've noticed, try to, no, let's have a conversation about having anyone on the team so we can cultivate this collaborative and diversified idea stream on the team. However, it's not about ideas. It's not about you thinking one thing and somebody else thinking another thing. It's not about you saying this is off-white and somebody says, no, this is slightly gray. No, it's not about these things. It's about the fact that I want to understand who you are as a person on an individual level. How do you are as a human being, right? And reading about you, where you came from, how did you transition, how do you talk about it, what do you say, which words do you use, how do you mention, how do you talk about your previous industry and your current industry, how do you talk about the transitioning process, how do you talk about yourself, how do you view yourself, and so forth. This is essentially a human qualities that is not necessarily about your ideology or your views of the world, your race, religion, or any of these things. It's about who you are and how do you behave as an individual. Because if I'm going to put 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 100 different individuals on the team, and 5, 7, or 10 of them need to work together closely all the time, most of the time, need to work together, I better them make sure that they can actually like each other. Because no matter what companies tell you, no matter what other hiring managers or recruiters say, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And so if we don't get along as human beings on a specific team, there's no point of me hiring you to be miserable on my team because you don't like people on my team, or vice versa, or both. If you don't like them and they don't like you, regardless of how talented you are and how desperately I want you on my team because you're an amazing designer, I'm not gonna hire. Why? Because it doesn't matter how great you are. It matters how well you work with the team you're being hired for, or how well that team is suited for you, and vice versa. How do you well suited for that team? And these are a lot of misconceptions people don't understand in the hiring process, where they think that somebody didn't hire me because I'm not good enough. It's not always the case. And there's another video coming about am I good enough or not, literally in a week or two. It's not about if you're good enough or not. It's about who you are as a person. We work together. We're people. In order for us to work together, we need to understand each other. We need to know, we need to get each other. We need to like each other. We need to, I'm not saying be best friends, or, some companies say, let's build a family. Come on, I have a family. I don't need another family. But what I do need is acquaintances, friends, people that I enjoy working with, people that I like, genuinely like, and that people like me or enjoy working with me, genuinely, not because they have to, but because they truly want to, and I want to work with them. So that's where your story comes in. Now, your story has two functions. It has a function of me understanding who you are as a person and you selling you to me as a hiring manager. So your story as you selling you to me needs to be engaging, interesting, cultivating, is that the right word? Captivating, my bad, sorry. English, third language. Captivating, interesting, showing your humanity, showing your human side, not your professional side. I want to hear about your professional side when I talk to you. I'll ask you all the questions that I need to ask you to kind of derive the information about who you are as a professional. But before I do that, and before I dive deeper into who you are and as a person and your life and whatnot, I want to have a bit of a understanding. I want to have a bit of a, an intro, if you will, into your life, right? Don't give me your details. I don't need to know about your cousins and aunts and family members and your how do you like them, don't like them, and your last family meal did not go well for whatever political disagreements you had. That, please don't. I don't need that. No one does. But what I do need is to, as I mentioned earlier, when you're crafting your story, you need to sit down and really think about not only about how do you tell the story to other people about yourself, but in what way. What do you mention? What do you don't mention? How do you stitch things together? How do you navigate from one point to another point? One of the things that or tips, if you will, that I say to people is, why don't you go and sit in front of a family member or friend that is not from necessarily your industry, or maybe it is, but not directly, and tell them about you. They probably know you because they're your friend or family member, but just tell them about you as who you are. Give them a story, right? Because at the end of the day, you are, as a creative, a storyteller. That's one of our main functions as designers, is to tell a story. It's either convincing a stakeholder of whatever feature or things that need to be improved or done or removed or canceled or whatnot through a story. Because if you're just going to come in and say, well, we did research, we found this needs to be removed, the end. If the company's stakeholder is the CEO, is going to say, fuck off, I don't care. I like that thing there, right? So in that regard, as I'm usually being interrupted in my videos by my watch, in that regard, you need to be able to sell your idea. You need to be able to sell your thought process of how do you arrive from discovering the problem that this CEO has in the product or this company has in the product. How do you went about validating this problem that it actually exists, finding the solution, how did you arrive at the solution, and how do you propose to implement the solution? That's a story. That's you telling that story to a stakeholder. Equally the same, I'm expecting a story about you. So in that story, when you're doing what you're doing today, it didn't start today. It started somewhere. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you're a car mechanic. You've been a car mechanic. So it started there. And from there, you went on discovering the design industry, the digital world, if you will, or digital product world. And you went on this process of boot camp or courses or whatnot, doing your projects and so forth. But tell me that you came from being a car mechanic. Tell me that story. That how do you start in as a car mechanic? Why did you go there? Why a car mechanic? Why not an electrician or a plumber or I don't know, Uber driver? Or why not a bus driver? Why not, there are a million different professions or occupations, I should say, I guess. In that story, when you talk about it, right? When I talk to people, I always say, here's the tip. That tip is whatever you used to do, just literally sit down and write almost a list of things that you used to do, right? And I'm not a car mechanic. I just sometimes observed car mechanics when they were working on my car some years ago when I used to drive older models of cars. And these days it's lease or whatnot, new cars. Typically you take them in and don't even see what they're doing there because you're not allowed in that area. But anyway, what I observed, right, as a car mechanic, the things that you do, you diagnose a problem in the car, right? So essentially, think about it as doing research, right? Or finding the right problem. That's your job as a designer, is finding the right problem. It can be you or it can be somebody else that you're working with. Will be finding that problem, but you're helping them. But it starts with, you don't just rush to design things just because you feel that you want or like, or because you think some things are cool or your idea is cool. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, our job is to solve problems and needs for our users or for people in general. Our job is to bring to the world products, features, functions, services, processes, and whatnot in service of other human beings. And so the first thing that you do or would do typically is diagnosing a problem. As a car mechanic, that's as well where you will start. is diagnosing the problem. How would you do that? How would you diagnose a problem in a car? I don't know. I'm not a car mechanic. I go to the professional and say, hey, I think I have a problem in my car. How do you diagnose it? I don't know. You tell me. Write it as a story. Write it a little paragraph or half a paragraph about how do you go about diagnosing the problem. And then after you diagnose the problem, then you have recommendations for me as your customer. And you come and say, hey, I found X, Y, and Z, and I recommend doing, A, B, and C. What do you think? And then you start talking to the customer, right? Of yes, maybe this, maybe that. The customer agrees, disagrees, or says, well, why not this? And you have to explain. You are literally in a negotiation at that point because you're talking to the stakeholder at that point. Your customer is your stakeholder because your stakeholder is the owner of that thing you're working on. It's a car, it's a fridge, it's a washer, it doesn't matter. I am the owner of that thing, and so I am the stakeholder, and you're talking to me, you're proposing your solutions of how to solve my problem that I don't know exist or I didn't know existed. And so in this instance, essentially there is a negotiation happening. So this is your experience, essentially, this is essentially your experience of negotiation. Write it down. I negotiated with people. I used to talk to people. So all of these things, when you write this list up, right, of all the things that you used to do, I assure you, maybe not 100%, but probably 95% of the time, you can find parallels in a design industry. Diagnosing a problem on a car, same thing with the product. You have to find the problem, the right problem to solve first. You go before you go about solving it. Then when you found the problem and you figured out the solution through whatever means, whatever ways, you figured out a solution, that's when you go back to either your team or stakeholder or customer or whatnot, and you negotiate that solution, saying, hey, this is what I found the problem is, this is how I propose solving it. If we're going to be solving it through this way, through this means, and this is what through my recommendation, that's potentially going to be the outcome, right? Then when you talk about the outcome, this is where you're selling me on the idea. As your customer or stakeholder, you're convincing me to do what you recommend me to do in order to solve my problem. Once again, you are now entering the world of storytelling. You're telling me the story, and I can tell you a million times that I went to a car mechanic and they found a problem. They would go about, they didn't just came to me and said, hey, I found a problem. Here's the problem. Here's how we solve it. Here's how much it costs. No, I have yet to bump into or meet a car mechanic that just answered or talked to me that way. Typically what happens is, hey, so we did X, Y, and Z to diagnose your problem. This is what we discovered. But while we were looking for this and discovered that, we also discovered this. So what I think you should do is X, Y, and Z on this part and A, B, and C on that part, and this will lead into so-and-so outcome. But if you won't, it will lead to a worse outcome and you'll have to pay more down the road. And if that's your choice, that's up to you, but I strongly recommend you doing blah, blah. They literally tell me a story about if I don't follow their advice, then potentially I am entering into harming myself even more with, I don't know, financially or physically, God forbid, because if something's not being fixed in the car, it's a problem. Excuse me. So here you are. As a car mechanic, you're doing literally almost the same actions as a UX designer or a product designer. It's just in a different setting, with different language, different words, in a different environment. So when you are talking about yourself on your about page and you're sitting down to craft your story, I want to know about you as a car mechanic. I want to know, how did you start? What did you used to do? How did you used to work? How did you transition into the digital product world? Why did you do that? Why did you decide to change your professions at some point, or whatever that point is? But also, the second purpose that your story serves to me is when I read about you, not only for you to sell me you, is for me to understand who you are as an individual. And among those things for me to understand, in understanding who you are as an individual, it's not only if you're going to be a good person, bad person, will you fit into the team or not, will my team or people that are my team that I know pretty well, that I've been working with, will work well with you, will you be able to work well with them, and whatnot. The other things that I also typically pick up and read between the lines that most people don't understand, that people like myself do read between the lines, is if you're a car mechanic and you used to fix and work on engines, to me what I read there, what I see there is that somebody who knows how to diagnose a problem. It's somebody who has an impeccable memory. That is somebody who can take the engine apart and put it back together. That is somebody who understands how a massive thing works on a granular level, because engine is not just one solid piece. It is a construction of multiple hundreds, if not sometimes thousands, of tiniest things, to the point of little bolts that are incredibly crucial to the engine to work. And you, as somebody who's been working on it, knows how to work with that, knows how to take it apart, put it back together, knows how to look at the bird's eye view as an engine itself, but also understand how a smallest thing in that massive machine might be impacting the operation of that massive machine. To me, that's a big value. As a hiring manager, I'm like, shit, this person will be able to add an immense value to my team. Why? Because I have no one on my team, for instance, that can do that. I have no one on my team that can work on the smallest thing and understand how that smallest thing will impact the rest of the entire machine. But you might be. So I might actually want you. Why? Because you have that capability. You have that knowledge and that experience. That's the value you bring to my team. Not just because you're a good product designer or UX designer, but also that part. The thing that makes me valuable oftentimes to many companies is the fact that I bring a vast experience of other things. I worked across different countries and continents. I speak 3 different languages. I understand another few languages. I worked on a huge array of different industries and products. I worked at agencies, which is a very different setting than working at a client side. That also means that a lot of people who hiring people like me, so typically are CEOs, founders, and so forth. To them, somebody who worked at an agency, an understanding is that person works really well under tight deadlines, pressure, ambiguity, constantly being able to switch instantly, context which you're working with or within, and so on and so forth. So these are the things that I do share as well in my story, and what I did as well before. How did I start? Where did I start? What crappy jobs I did, if you will, or random jobs that I did before getting into this industry. These are the things that make you, and these are the things that make you stand out from the rest of the crowd of millions of others who are aiming for that entry level or even mid-level position. So think about it really well. Sit down and think about your story. Think about how do you deliver it, what do you talk about, how do you talk about it, which things you mention, how do you mention it, and so forth. Now, I'm gonna end my quote-unquote little rant here about this part. I hope that all of you who are watching this video can understand the value of the story and the value of having your own story. It is part of your general self-branding, because at the end of the day, when you're putting it on your website, it's doing that work for you. You can't walk around all the companies and different places and meet them face to face and tell them that story. That's just not scalable, or impossible, if you will. So your website is doing that function for you. when you understand that part, that your website is not only there for hiring managers to come when you apply for a job, it's there for people randomly also discovering it. Because believe it or not, sometimes hiring managers like myself, before we go and hire recruiters, before we post a job posting, we might spend a few weeks, if not even a month, just scouting the internet, looking for different forums, looking through Reddits, and looking through Behance, and looking through LinkedIn, and looking through, Reddit. I said Reddit before. A bunch of other places where people can find other designers, other creatives. I can just Google things and randomly find portfolios. So oftentimes we do this, we try to go and find things by ourselves before we even put out an option for other people to apply into our position. Because when we're not pressed too much and we just kind of casually on the outlook for the next talent that we potentially want to bring and hire on our team, there's no job postings for that. We just randomly look at things. Sometimes I can just sit and spend half an hour just to kind of have a mental break in the middle of the day. I'll spend 15, 20, sometimes even 30 minutes just surfing different platforms where I can see different designers and look at their portfolios. And if I read some interesting stories of people, I'm like, shit, this is somebody I'm gonna put aside in a little folder on my favorites that once I have an opening, I'm gonna reach out. So think about it in such a way. Once again, I want to thank everyone for spending this time watching my videos. I hope this video was helpful and useful to you. If you have any questions, if you disagree with me, or you want to say anything, comments down below. Please feel free to comment. I answer every comment, regardless if it's a question, feedback, or anything else. Outside of that, feel free to like, subscribe, share this video with anyone you think needs to listen to this video. And I really do appreciate every one of you. I do appreciate the support. I do appreciate people who subscribe to my channel, follow me, and watch my videos. I do post about everything else that I do on LinkedIn, so go ahead and find me on LinkedIn as well and follow me there. Thank you once again. Have an awesome rest of your day, or day in general, or the rest of your week, or the weekend if you're watching it right before the weekend. And never stop learning.